With us now, Fox News analyst and Columbia University professor Marc Lamont, and from D.C., Washington Times columnist Amanda Carpenter. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Now, it is not required, Marc, that the czars fill out these forms that cabinet posts and deputy cabinet posts require. Right. But if it would have been filled out, what we would have learned from Van Jones, I want to ask you, let's put this up if we can. I didn't have to go even further than the first page of 7. Briefly describe the most controversial matters you have been involved with during the course of your career. We now know that he was involved in signing a petition that asked the question of whether or not the Bush administration had involvement in 9/11. He admits he signed it. He says, and Howard Dean says on his behalf, we'll play that in a second, he didn't know what he was signing. Would that have come up if he had been required to fill out this form?
Probably not, actually, because if we believe in good faith that he didn't do it on purpose, and I believe that he didn't do it on purpose, then he probably wouldn't have put that down. And I'll tell you why I believe he didn't do it on purpose. Because he's been very straightforward. If nothing else, he's not shy. He could have ducked this. He could have said an aide signed me up. I didn't do this myself. But he was very straightforward and said, I signed up, but I didn't fully understand it. I believe him.
So unless they are liars, they were lying to me on the phone, Van Jones knew exactly what he was signing on to.
Did the president, Mark, the president has been busy, obviously, with other things, but had to have known this controversy was going on. And now that Jones has stepped aside, Dean says it's a loss, maybe because he has some green energy expertise. But the president hasn't said anything about it. Are we owed an explanation?
I think we are. I think the president has to answer a very simple question. Did you know this was the case already? If you did, why did you still hire him? If you didn't, why didn't you vet him? It seems to me, though, that the president did know and that the Obama administration seemed to understand that this wasn't going to be, or at least they believed that it wouldn't be a problem. Of course, they miscalculated that, as they miscalculated a few things lately. They were wrong. This turned out to be a huge problem, and that's why it's so disappointing that the Obama administration didn't fight for Van Jones. They put him up there, they hire the guy, and then they throw him under the bus when it's politically expedient. It's very disappointing.
You think they should have kept him in the position and supported him?
If you know someone has a background and you decide to post someone in that position anyway, then I think you have a duty to fight for that person. Absolutely. That's what's happened in the past with Bush, with Clinton, and everyone else. He could have dispensed surrogates on the Sunday shows to defend Van Jones. Instead, they did nothing. And Gibbs gave the most superficial, sort of lighthearted defense of him that I've ever seen of any presidential appointee.
Amanda, should the rule...
So what do you think about the health care bill?
I think the racists and right wing are upset because poor people are about to be helped.
I'm joined again by Marc Lamont and Amanda Carpenter. Marc, let me start with you. The Reverend Wright, we hadn't heard much about him. Now he's speaking out to all places TMZ on health care reform. What's going on?
Well, I mean, I love Jeremiah Wright, sincerely, but he is the gift that keeps on giving for Republicans. Obama's against the ropes right now. He's had perhaps the worst month of his presidency in August. There's this grand narrative getting stronger and stronger about him being an outsider and a socialist and all these other things. And then Jeremiah Wright comes back into the picture. It's not a good thing for the Obama administration. I think, though, that Jeremiah Wright is absolutely correct. That issues of poverty, issues of race have to be injected into a conversation about health care reform.
That's not what he's saying. He's saying that the wealthy people are upset that the poor people are finally going to get coverage. Well, how can you make a statement like that?
Well, I don't think it's that simple. I think when you get caught in sound bites, particularly in the TMZ world, it gets reduced to that. But I think there's a deeper issue here, which is what does it mean for all Americans to have access to health care? There's something at stake. And the people who will be sacrificed here, to some extent financially, are the wealthy. I don't know if they're racist. I'm not willing to call them racist.
But he did?
Well, Jeremiah Wright and I don't necessarily agree on this point. But fundamentally, there's an issue about race and class that we have to talk about, and he's right.
Has definitely, it would seem, Marc, though we don't know, distanced himself from Reverend Wright, but there he is. And let me ask you, there are calls for the president to get tougher. No more Mr. Nice Guy, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
on health care.
Absolutely. Bill Moyers is probably one of the most, loud voices right now saying health care is a pressing issue for Obama's administration, but also for the American people. And if he doesn't get tough and stand up and stop smiling and apologizing all the time to the right, they're going to keep beating up on him. And Bill Moyers is absolutely right. And I think that's for a few reasons. One, I think Obama is reading his own press clippings too much. I think he's drinking his own Kool-Aid too much. He came in riding a wave of his own awesomeness so much that he thought he could convince the left and the right to just do what's right. And politics doesn't work that way. It's a much more dirty game. He has to get tough. He has to stand up for his ideology and his belief system. If he does not, healthcare is going to die on the vine, and so is Obama's political future.
On Wednesday, Amanda, how specific does the president need to get on the health care plan that now the White House is saying he may draw up on his own?
Well, he has to be very specific. If this is just another speech where he comes up and says, these are kind of my principles, and gives some vague guidelines for Congress to go work itself out again, it will be a failure. There's any number of things that he could go up and specifically ask for. He could say, I need the public option, and maybe co-ops, and maybe public option with the trigger. Nobody knows yet, but he has to come out with a specific plan, because calling a joint session of Congress is a very big deal, and it's not something that's taken lightly.
The lines in the sand line that came up on the Sunday shows as the president dispatched his top advisors to talk about it, what are the other options that he could lay out as he draws these lines in the sand? Is it a take it or leave it to Congress when they come back?
At some point, it has to be. I mean, Amanda and I actually agree on this. We might not agree on our ideologies, but we certainly agree that he has to be specific and he has to draw a line in the sand. Obama has done an amazing job of going around the country, talking to hundreds of people, and not really saying anything in terms of specifics. I think the line in the sand that most American people care about right now actually is this public option. I'm okay with the public option with the trigger. Many of us on the left are okay with the public option with the trigger. But what we will not allow is the public option to completely fall off the table. He would compromise his entire left-wing base, myself included. And so I think that's an issue that he has to address right now, as well as issues around Medicare and portability and co-ops and all these other issues. But the public option is so much at the front of the public conversation that he has to address it.
Amanda, I want to thank you, and Dr. Hill from Columbia. Thank you so much for being with us. Thanks to both of you.